Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is one of those games that doesn't tell you up front what it's about. You've got to figure that out yourself, and that's exactly what makes it so special. You play as an astronaut exploring a miniature solar system caught in a 22-minute time loop. Yeah, it sounds like a gimmick, but it's not. It's the heart of the game. The brilliance of Outer Wilds is in its sense of discovery. It doesn't hold your hand, doesn't throw objectives at you, it just drops you into this mysterious handcrafted world and lets you explore at your own pace. Every planet, moon, and ancient ruin has a secret, and as you unravel the mysteries of this dying universe, you start to piece together a much larger, more profound story. The game's design rewards curiosity. If you see something interesting in the distance, go there, odds are it's important. There's no combat, no experience points, no boss fights. It's all about exploration and piecing together what happened to this ancient alien race, why the time loop exists, and what your role is in all of it. And that 22-minute loop, it creates this amazing tension. Do you have enough time to reach that distant planet? Can you decode that ancient text before the loop resets? It's a race against time, but without the stress, just the thrill of discovery. In short, Outer Wilds is a game that respects your intelligence, trusts you to figure things out, and offers an unforgettable journey through space and time. It's truly one of a kind and absolutely worth the dive. Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is an absolute stunner, not just visually, but in how it brings feudal Japan to life. You play as Jin Sakai, a samurai torn between honor and survival as he fights against the Mongol invasion of Tsushima Island. The game does a great job of balancing that internal conflict. Are you the honorable warrior, or will you embrace the path of the ghost to save your people, even if it means getting your hands dirty? Combat in this game is satisfying. You've got a katana, and the duels feel tense and cinematic, but there's also stealth if you want to go full ninja. Switching between the two styles gives you options for every encounter, and mastering the different sword stances to counter various enemies is super rewarding. You really feel like a samurai when you get it right. But what really stands out in Ghost of Tsushima is how it uses the world itself. There's no traditional HUD cluttering up the screen. The wind guides you to your next objective, and it's a simple touch that makes exploration feel natural. The landscapes are breathtaking too, from golden forests to snowy mountains, and it all feels like you're playing through a samurai film. The story isn't just about vengeance, it's about sacrifice, tradition, and what it means to be a warrior. And even outside of the main plot, the side quests are strong, giving you a real sense of the island's history and its people. If you love open world games that mix strong combat with stunning visuals and deep story, Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best out there. Return of the Obra Dinn. Return of the Obra Dinn is a game that's unlike anything else out there. You're an insurance investigator, but don't let that fool you. This is no ordinary desk job. The ship Obra Dinn mysteriously reappears after going missing, and it's your job to figure out what happened to the crew. Armed with a magical pocket watch that lets you see the moment of each crew member's death, you're essentially solving a giant murder mystery. What makes the game so engaging is that it throws you into this complex web of relationships, secrets, and brutal deaths, but doesn't spoon feed you anything. It's all up to you to piece together the fates of everyone on board, and it's incredibly satisfying when the clues start clicking together. You'll be flipping through the ship's manifest, comparing uniforms, accents, and tiny details that eventually reveal the whole story. The visual style is something you've probably never seen before. Everything's rendered in this old school, one-bit monochrome look, like a playable piece of classic art. It might seem simple, but it gives the game this haunting, timeless atmosphere that pulls you deeper into the mystery. but it's the storytelling that really sticks with you. Every life and death on the Obra Dinn feels personal, and by the end, you're not just checking off names, you're invested in these characters, even though you only see them in their final moments. It's a puzzle game that rewards patience and attention to detail, but it also tells a story that lingers long after you close the book on the final chapter. If you're into detective stories or just love a game that respects your intelligence, Return of the Obra Dinn is absolutely worth it. It's the kind of experience that stays with you, and there's nothing quite like it.
Let me help you.
The Forgotten City.
But I never could save these people.
The Forgotten City is a brilliant narrative-driven mystery that sneaks up on you with its depth. What started as a Skyrim mod evolved into a fully fledged game with a story that's way more compelling than you'd expect. You're thrown into an ancient Roman city trapped in a time loop where the entire population is bound by one rule: if even one person sins, everyone dies. Your job. Figure out who's going to break that rule before it happens. The game is all about exploration and dialogue, but not in a way that feels tedious. Every conversation you have peels back another layer of the city's secrets, and the way the time loop works means you're constantly rewinding, trying new approaches, and using the knowledge you've gained to change the future. The loop never feels repetitive though, because each run gives you new tools to solve the puzzle. It's more of a mental chess game than anything else.
Everyone will die.
What sets the Forgotten City apart is the moral dilemmas it throws at you. The people in the city aren't just NPCs with fetch quests, they're fully fleshed out characters with real stakes in this strange situation. You'll have to navigate tough choices that challenge your own ideas of right and wrong, and sometimes even your best intentions might lead to unexpected consequences. The setting itself is gorgeous too. Walking through the ancient city feels like stepping into a living museum, and the way the narrative ties into philosophy, history, and myth adds layers that you don't often see in games. The Forgotten City isn't just a mystery game, it's a thoughtful, well-written experience that'll make you question more than just whodunit if you're into games that respect your choices and make you think this one's worth every minute.
Salve, friend.
Disco Elysium.
Boys, you can handle it.
Disco Elysium is an absolute masterpiece of storytelling and world building, and if you're a fan of single-player games that break the mold, this one deserves your attention and your money. So, what's Disco Elysium? It's an isometric RPG, but let me stop you right there if that makes you think of swords, dragons, and generic fantasy settings. This game is nothing like that. You're not some mighty warrior here, you're a washed-up detective trying to solve a murder while also piecing together the broken fragments of your life. Set in a world that feels like a blend of political dystopia and surreal, bleak beauty, the game throws you into the shoes of a protagonist who is as flawed as they come. Honestly, you'll spend as much time figuring out your own past as you will trying to crack the case. Here's where it really shines: the dialogue and choices. In Disco Elysium, conversations are the real action. You can dive into deep philosophical debates or just go off on tangents that might reveal more about your character's broken psyche. The way you shape your detective is incredible. You can lean into intellect, brute force, or even your own bizarre internal monologue, with these different aspects of your personality fighting for control in your mind. It's like your thoughts are characters too, and they're hilarious, tragic, and just plain wild. You'll find yourself in situations where a bad dice roll might lead you into an awkward conversation or completely ruin an investigation, but in Disco Elysium, failure is often more interesting than success.
And are given him the finger, furiously, with both hands.
What's truly amazing is how the game gives you an open-ended narrative with tons of options and directions to go in. You can focus on solving the mystery or completely lose yourself in the personal drama of the characters. The city of Rivakul, where the game takes place, is full of people and places that feel alive, as if every little corner has its own stories waiting to be uncovered. And that's a huge part of what makes Disco Elysium stand out. It's not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about living in this gritty, broken world and figuring out your place in it. Visually, it's stunning too. The art style is like a painting in motion, with these dream-like, almost abstract environments that are drenched in atmosphere. The soundtrack is equally mesmerizing, adding to the melancholy yet strangely hopeful tone of the game. Now, let's be real here, Disco Elysium is not for everyone. It's a slow burn game that's extremely dialogue heavy, so if you're looking for constant action or combat, this might not be your cup of tea. In fact, there's no traditional combat at all. Every confrontation, whether physical or mental, is handled through dialogue, dice rolls, and choices. That might sound limiting, but it actually feels more intense because the stakes feel real. Your choices matter, and the consequences of your decisions ripple throughout the story in ways you won't see coming. But if you love games that push the boundaries of what interactive storytelling can be, this is one you can't afford to miss. There's a reason this game has been showered with awards. It's a raw, emotional, and often darkly funny journey that sticks with you long after the credits roll. If you're on the fence, trust me when I say Disco Elysium is worth every penny. It's an experience you won't find anywhere else, and it's easily one of the most unique single-player games of the last decade. Just be prepared for some existential crises along the way. Mass Effect Trilogy. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. If you haven't experienced Mass Effect yet, what are you doing with your life? This trilogy is basically the gold standard for how to do a sci-fi RPG series, right? Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a game where your decisions actually matter across not just one, but 3 games? Yeah, 3. You play as Commander Shepard, and I swear, few games let you feel so personally involved in shaping not just your character, but the fate of the entire galaxy. We're talking about making decisions that have real weight, and trust me, some of them are brutal. There are moments where you'll stop and just stare at the screen, questioning everything you've done up to that point. But that's part of what makes it so good it gets under your skin. And I think one of the most impressive things about Mass Effect is how it balances a story that's epic in scale while also being deeply personal. Sure, you're fighting to save the galaxy from the Reapers, these ancient machines that basically want to wipe out all sentient life, but the heart of the game is in its characters. And the combat evolves across the trilogy, and by the time you hit Mass Effect 3, the shooting and biotic powers combo feels just right. It's not perfect in the first game, it's a bit clunky, but even that adds to its charm. You're there for the story and the world building, and the combat eventually becomes second nature. Oh, and speaking of world building, Mass Effect throws you into a universe so rich with lore that you'll find yourself reading up on the political structure of alien races you've never heard of before. That codex, it's like a sci-fi encyclopedia, and you won't even mind because it's that fascinating. Every planet, every species feels like it has its own history, its own culture, and you're just dropped in the middle of this living, breathing galaxy. The Mass Effect trilogy is just special. It's a perfect blend of storytelling, character development, and player agency that hasn't really been replicated since. Few games make you feel like your choices have such far-reaching consequences, and even fewer can pull it off across 3 full games. Whether you're commanding a ship, exploring alien worlds, or just trying to keep your crew alive, the Mass Effect trilogy is a masterpiece in every sense of the word. You owe it to yourself to experience this. Plague Tale Requiem. This game right here, it's the kind of emotional roller coaster that sneaks up on you. If you've played a Plague Tale Innocence, you'll know what I'm talking about, but Requiem takes things to an entirely new level. It's dark, it's haunting, and it's got a story that'll hit you right in the gut. You step back into the shoes of Amisha, who's honestly one of the most well-rounded protagonists we've seen in recent years. The game picks up after the events of Innocence, and without spoiling too much, Amisha and her younger brother Hugo are once again caught in this nightmare of a world that's crawling with plague, rats, so many rats, and the Inquisition. And let me just say, Requiem takes that desperate survival horror vibe and cranks it up to 11. Now, one of the things that stands out the most in Requiem is the relationship between Amisha and Hugo. It's not just a game about protecting your brother anymore. Hugo's powers have grown, and with that comes a whole bunch of moral dilemmas and difficult choices. You feel that weight Amisha is struggling to keep it together, to keep Hugo safe while the world is literally falling apart around them. The emotional toll is real, and the game doesn't shy away from it.
Yes!
Gameplay-wise, Requiem is like a refined, more intense version of what made Innocence great. The stealth mechanics feel tighter, and while Misha is still relatively fragile in combat, she's much more capable this time around. There's something super satisfying about how she uses her sling, but now you've got more tools at your disposal. It's still a game where you can't just rush in and smash through enemies, though you have to be clever. You use the environment, lure enemies into traps, and of course, control those terrifying swarms of rats to your advantage. Yup, Hugo's powers are back in full force, and they're even more horrifying this time. And visually, oh man, this game is stunning. The environments are jaw-droppingly gorgeous, and they really contrast with the grim, brutal world the characters are trapped in. You'll go from these beautiful French countrysides to grotesque, rat-infested cities, and it's all just so immersive. There's something about the quiet, serene moments in Requiem that makes the darker, more chaotic scenes hit that much harder. And the rats. We can't not talk about the rats. If you thought there were a lot of rats in Innocence, Requiem turns it into a full-blown nightmare. There are just waves and waves of them swarming through the streets, consuming everything in their path. And the way the game uses them as both a gameplay mechanic and a symbol of the plague is honestly genius. It's this constant creeping dread that never lets up. The narrative itself is what really seals the deal. Plague Tale Requiem is one of those games that leaves you emotionally wrecked, but in the best possible way. It's not just about surviving, it's about what happens to you when you're forced to endure so much trauma, loss, and fear. There are moments that will make you tear up, no question. The bond between Amisha and Hugo is the heart of the game, and the way it evolves throughout the story will absolutely stick with you. In the end, Requiem is a perfect blend of heart-pounding stealth action and emotional storytelling. It's heavy, yeah, but it's the kind of experience that lingers long after you put the controller down. The way it weaves together its tight gameplay, breathtaking visuals, and deeply human story makes it an absolute must-play. The Last of Us Part 1. The Last of Us Part 1 is one of those rare games that isn't just a game, it's an experience. Even if you're not typically into post-apocalyptic settings, this one will grab you by the heart and refuse to let go. It's been around for a while now, but whether you're playing the original or the recent remake, it still holds up as one of the most gripping, emotionally charged stories ever told in gaming. It's not just another zombie game. The Last of Us is all about the characters. Ellie, a teenage girl who's immune to the infection and who just might hold the key to saving the world. The relationship between Joel and Ellie is the core of this game. It's raw, complicated, and evolves in ways that feel painfully real. Joel's not just some hardened badass, he's a broken man dealing with the loss of his daughter, and Ellie, she's tough, funny, vulnerable, and probably one of the most well-written characters you'll ever meet in a game. Their dynamic is the heart of everything, and it's the kind of relationship that sticks with you long after the credits roll. What really sets The Last of Us apart, though, is its storytelling. It's intense, it's gritty, and it doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of this world. This isn't a game where you just mow down enemies and feel like a hero. Every encounter feels dangerous and desperate. You're scavenging for supplies, crafting makeshift weapons, and always trying to survive. There's this constant tension where you feel like you're one wrong move away from getting overwhelmed by either the infected or, more often than not, other humans. The way Naughty Dog pulls off that balance between action, survival, and story is nothing short of masterful. Visually, The Last of Us is a work of art, especially in the remake. The level of detail in the environments, from crumbling buildings overtaken by nature to the haunting abandoned streets, is insane. It's this beautiful yet terrifying world where danger lurks around every corner, and the character animations, it's unreal how expressive and lifelike they are, especially during the emotional scenes. It really helps drive home the weight of the story when you can see every nuance in their facial expressions. The combat itself is another area where the game shines. It's brutal and unforgiving, but it never feels over the top. Every bullet counts, every melee attack is desperate, and stealth is often your best friend. But what really stands out is how the combat serves the story. It's not there just to give you something to do. Between cutscenes, it feels like part of Joel's and Ellie's journey, adding to the tension and stakes. And let's be honest, the clickers, absolutely terrifying. The sound design alone is enough to make you break out in a cold sweat when you hear them nearby. But what makes The Last of Us Part 1 truly perfect is how it lingers with you long after you've finished it. It's not just a game about survival, it's about what it means to hold on to your humanity in a world that's lost its way. It's about the choices we make, the people we love, and the sacrifices we're willing to endure. The ending, don't even get me started. It's one of the most talked about finales in gaming history, and for good reason. It leaves you questioning everything and feeling all kinds of emotions at once. If you haven't played The Last of Us yet, you absolutely should. It's more than just a game, it's a story that demands to be experienced. Uncharted 4. If we're talking about the perfect mix of action, storytelling, and cinematic flair, then Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is a no-brainer for this list. This game is like playing through an Indiana Jones movie, but with a bit more emotional depth and a protagonist that we all can't help but love. Nathan Drake, everyone's favorite treasure hunter, is back for one final ride, and man, what a ride it is. First off, Uncharted 4 is a visual masterpiece. Whether you're climbing crumbling ruins in the jungle, exploring sunken pirate ships, or scaling mountains during a full-on snowstorm, every frame of this game is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. It's the kind of game where you'll stop just to admire the view before you get back into the action. Naughty Dog really outdid themselves here. The environments feel alive, from the bustling streets of a tropical city to the hidden caves filled with treasures, and of course death traps. The attention to detail is insane. But the real magic of Uncharted 4 is in its characters and story. Nathan Drake has always been that fun, sarcastic, devil-may-care adventurer, but here, he's more layered, he's older, he's retired, and he's trying to live a normal life with his wife Elena. But when his long-lost brother Sam shows up, Nate gets pulled back into the treasure-hunting life he swore he left behind. The dynamic between Nate and Sam is perfect. It feels like real sibling banter, the love, the rivalry, the history between them all blend into this really engaging relationship that drives the whole story forward. And speaking of story, Uncharted 4 manages to balance its trademark blockbuster action with a more grounded, personal narrative. It's about brotherhood, about the cost of obsession, and about figuring out what's most important in life. Nate's internal struggle, torn between his thirst for adventure and his desire for a peaceful life with Elena, makes this game hit harder emotionally than the previous entries. It's not just about finding treasure anymore, it's about the relationships and the choices that define Nate as a person. Now let's get to the action, because Uncharted 4 doesn't hold back. The set pieces are just as wild and over the top as ever. There's this one chase scene in Madagascar where you're in a jeep being hunted down by armored trucks and enemy soldiers. It's just chaos in the best possible way. The game keeps finding ways to top itself with massive shootouts, death-defying platforming, and those classic Uncharted moments where you think, there's no way I'm surviving this, but somehow Nate pulls through. It's pulse-pounding and the pacing is perfect. It never feels like the action drags or overstays its welcome. But there's more depth to the gameplay this time around. The addition of the grappling hook opens up new ways to approach combat and exploration. You can swing around, get the drop on enemies, or just use it to make a daring escape when everything is crumbling, which happens a lot. The stealth mechanics have been improved too. You can choose to go in guns blazing or sneak around and pick enemies off one by one. It's the kind of freedom that makes each encounter feel fresh. And then there's the climbing. Uncharted 4 is all about those insane climbing sequences where you're scaling cliffs, dodging falling debris, and barely holding on by your fingertips. It's tense, it's thrilling, and it feels more dynamic than ever thanks to the improved movement mechanics. You can leap from ledge to ledge, use your grappling hook to swing across gaps, and even take different paths to reach your goal. It's not just about pressing a button anymore, there's more strategy to it. Of course, it wouldn't be Uncharted without some puzzles. They're not overly difficult, but they're clever enough to make you feel like you're solving ancient mysteries alongside Nate. It's the perfect blend of action, exploration, and puzzle solving that keeps the pacing tight and the experience exciting from start to finish. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is the complete package. It's an exhilarating treasure hunt, a heartfelt story of family and love, and one of the most polished, cinematic experiences you'll ever play. Whether you're swinging across chasms or engaging in a tense shootout, it's always a thrill, and you'll be grinning the entire way through. A Way Out. Okay, so A Way Out is one of those games that completely redefines what a co-op experience should be. If you haven't played it yet, this is a game that you need to experience with a friend. And not just any friend, someone who's down for teamwork, because this game absolutely hinges on that. The whole point of A Way Out is that you can't play it solo. And that's what makes it so special. The story follows two characters, Leo and Vincent, who are both locked up in prison, but for very different reasons. Their paths cross, and from that point forward, you and your co-op partner are basically living out a full-blown Prison Break movie. Seriously, it's like The Shawshank Redemption meets Prison Break, but with more action, more heart, and some wild twists. What sets A Way Out apart is how seamlessly it blends its storytelling with its gameplay. It's split screen, so you're constantly seeing what both characters are doing at the same time, whether you're sitting on the same couch or playing online. It's this really unique dynamic where you might be sneaking through a corridor while your partner is distracting a guard, or you're working together to pull off some complex escape plan. And I mean, when's the last time a game forced you to literally time your movements with someone else to get through a section? It adds this whole layer of tension and fun that makes every moment feel like a shared experience. The real magic of A Way Out is in how it makes you care about these characters. Leo's a hothead, a rough around the edges kind of guy, while Vincent is the more calm, calculated one. But as you play, you start to see their layers peel back. The game does an amazing job of balancing action-packed prison escapes with quieter, more emotional moments. You're not just trying to bust out of jail, there's a deeper story about family, revenge, and redemption that keeps pulling you in. You start to care about why these two guys are risking everything, and it makes the stakes feel that much higher. One of the coolest things about A Way Out is how varied the gameplay is. It's not just all stealth and sneaking around, though. There's plenty of that. You've got car chases, shootouts, mini games, even moments where you're just chilling and playing darts or arm wrestling with your co-op partner. The pacing is spot on because it's constantly switching things up. Just when you think you've gotten into a rhythm, the game throws something new at you. And all of it is designed to keep you and your partner in sync, whether you're working together to distract guards, solve puzzles, or fight off enemies. But the real jaw-dropper is how the game ends. Without spoiling anything, let's just say that A Way Out pulls off one of the boldest moves in recent gaming history. The ending is an emotional gut punch, and it completely flips the script on everything you've been working toward. It's the kind of moment that'll leave you and your co-op partner sitting in stunned silence, or maybe even arguing about what just happened. It's bold, it's unexpected, and it makes A Way Out unforgettable. And look, we have to talk about the co-op mechanics here because it's so integral to the game's design. This isn't just a game where your friend tags along for the ride, you literally can't do anything without them. And from the simplest tasks like lifting objects to the more complex escape plans, everything requires teamwork. And it's not always about perfect synchronization either. Sometimes one of you might have to make a tough call while the other watches, and that tension adds so much to the game. It's not just player 1 and player 2, both of you have your own roles, your own responsibilities, and that sense of partnership is what makes A Way Out feel so unique. On top of all that, the game's presentation is fantastic. The cinematography in A Way Out makes you feel like you're part of a high-stakes action movie. The way the camera moves, how it shifts focus between the two characters during key moments, and how it splits the screen to give you different perspectives, it's all done so fluidly. And the environments? Whether you're sneaking through the gritty, claustrophobic prison or racing through wide-open countryside, the game looks gorgeous. It keeps you immersed in the experience the entire way through. In the end, A Way Out is simply a one-of-a-kind experience. It's not just a game, it's an emotional, cinematic adventure that you and a friend have to tackle together. It's the kind of game that sticks with you, especially with that ending. And while it's short, the memories and moments it creates are unforgettable. It's proof that co-op games can be just as impactful, if not more, than traditional single-player experiences. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Alright, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is just one of those games that comes along every once in a blue moon and absolutely blows your expectations out of the water. If you're into RPGs, or even if you're not, this is a game that you must experience. It's the kind of game that makes other RPGs look shallow by comparison. There's depth in every corner of this game, from the intricate world building to the smallest side quest, and it's all wrapped up in a beautifully immersive world. You play as Geralt of Rivia, a monster hunter for hire, but calling him just a monster hunter is selling him way short. He's this gruff, no-nonsense guy with a gravelly voice and a sword on his back, but beneath all that, he's one of the most complex and nuanced characters in gaming, and the best part is the choices you make as Geralt matter. Like, really matter. The Witcher 3 is a game where your decisions carry actual weight, not just for the story, but for the people in the world. You'll make choices that will have you second-guessing yourself for hours, and it's not always clear what the right or wrong decision is, which is exactly what makes the narrative so rich. Speaking of the world, the sheer scale of The Witcher 3 is staggering. The map is enormous, but what makes it truly special is that it never feels empty. Every inch of this world is packed with things to do, people to meet, and monsters to slay. Whether you're galloping across the beautiful plains of Velen, exploring the dark, mysterious swamps, or wandering the bustling streets of Novigrad, the world feels alive. It's one of those games where you'll set out to do a main quest, get distracted by some random side quest, and then realize hours later that you've just spent the whole day lost in this beautiful handcrafted world. And the side quests are not your usual fetch quests or filler content. No, in The Witcher 3, side quests are basically mini stories in their own right. They're rich, they're complex, and some of them are even more compelling than the main storyline in other games. You'll find yourself getting wrapped up in the lives of the people you meet, whether it's helping a villager with a cursed well or solving a murder mystery in the heart of the city. Every quest feels meaningful, and the writing is top-notch across the board. There's a reason this game is still talked about years after its release, and it's because the level of care and detail in the storytelling is unmatched. But honestly, the heart of the game is the story of Geralt and his relationships, especially with his adoptive daughter, Ciri. The main quest has you chasing after her, trying to find her before the ominous Wild Hunt does. It's emotional, it's gripping, and the way it all plays out depends on the choices you make along the way. The characters you meet, from Geralt's old flame Yennefer to the sorceress Triss, all feel fully realized with their own motivations and goals. Every interaction feels important, and you get really attached to these people. By the end of the game, you feel like you've been through hell and back with them. At the end of the day, The Witcher 3 is a masterpiece. It's one of those games that you can pour hundreds of hours into and still find something new to love. Whether it's the deep, choice-driven narrative, the rich and immersive world, or the complex and satisfying combat, The Witcher 3 is simply one of the best RPGs ever made. If you haven't experienced it yet, do yourself a favor and dive into Geralt's world. You won't regret it.
Let me finish telling it.
Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus is one of those games that completely nails the atmosphere from the moment you step into its world. It's grim, it's haunting, and it's packed with tension. If you're into games that pull you into their environment and make you feel like you're truly living out the story, then this one is a must-play. The Metro series has always been known for its gritty, claustrophobic settings, but Exodus shakes things up by pushing the player out into the open world well, a post-apocalyptic Russian open world, but still. You step back into the role of Artyom, the quiet, determined protagonist from the previous Metro games, and this time you're on a journey that takes you far beyond the underground tunnels of Moscow. Instead of sticking to the tight, dark, and often terrifying Metro systems, Exodus opens things up by letting you explore vast, open areas, and man, does it make a difference. Each location feels like its own little sandbox filled with danger, secrets, and the ever-present sense of dread that Metro does so well. Now, don't get me wrong, the game still has plenty of those intense claustrophobic moments where you're creeping through abandoned tunnels or decrepit buildings with only the faint flicker of your flashlight to guide you. But what Exodus does brilliantly is blend those tight, heart-pounding sequences with the freedom of open-world exploration. You'll find yourself sneaking through dark corridors 1 minute, and then trekking across a sun-baked desert the next. The way the game shifts between these environments keeps things fresh and unpredictable. One of the standout features of Metro Exodus is its world building. This is a game where the environment is just as much a character as the people you meet. From the snowy wastes of Russia's frozen wilderness to the scorching sands of the Caspian Sea, each region is meticulously designed to feel lived in, broken down, and almost suffocating in its bleakness. There's a story behind every ruined building, every abandoned vehicle, and it makes the world feel alive in the most desolate way possible. You're not just passing through these locations, you're surviving them. And speaking of survival, Exodus really leans into those mechanics. It's not just about shooting mutants and bandits, though there's plenty of that. You're constantly scavenging for supplies, crafting new weapons, and managing your resources. You have to make every bullet count, and there's this constant tension as you weigh your options. Do you sneak past this group of enemies to save ammo, or do you go in guns blazing and risk running out of supplies? The game makes you think, and every decision feels like it could be your last. The narrative in Metro Exodus is also a high point. While the game is rooted in its post-apocalyptic setting, it's really about hope, survival, and the search for a better life. Artyom and his companions aboard the Aurora, your train, which acts as a mobile base of operations, are trying to escape the desolation of Moscow and find a new place to call home. Along the way, you'll meet various factions, each with their own struggles, and you'll face some tough moral decisions. It's not always black and white, and that's what makes the story so engaging. You'll find yourself questioning your choices and their impact on the people around you. One of the most impressive aspects of Exodus is how it handles its pacing. The game knows when to slow things down and let you soak in the world, and when to ramp up the tension and throw you into an all-out firefight. There are moments of quiet beauty, like watching the sun set over a ruined landscape, and then there are moments where you're running for your life from mutant horrors that you can barely see in the dark. It's that balance of quiet reflection and sheer terror that makes Metro Exodus such an unforgettable experience. And let's not forget the visuals. Metro Exodus is absolutely stunning, especially when you're out in the open. The level of detail in the environments is staggering. Every rusted vehicle, crumbling building, and twisted tree looks like it's been sitting there for years. The lighting in particular is amazing. Whether it's the dim glow of your flashlight or the harsh sunlight beating down on you, the lighting creates this eerie, oppressive atmosphere that pulls you right into the game's world. The combat in Exodus feels solid too. It's not your typical run and gun shooter. You've got to be methodical, strategic, and aware of your surroundings. There's a weight to the weapons, and since ammo is scarce, you really feel the pressure to make every shot count. Stealth plays a big role, and it's incredibly satisfying to sneak past a group of enemies or take them out quietly one by one. But when things go wrong, and they often do, you can feel the panic set in as you scramble to reload or find cover. It's intense, and it keeps you on your toes. At its core, Metro Exodus is a story about survival and the lengths people will go to for a better future. The game doesn't just throw you into a grim world, it makes you care about that world and the people in it. The characters, especially Artyom and his companions, feel real and relatable. You'll want them to survive, and that's what makes the stakes feel so high. And let's just say, the game isn't afraid to hit you with some emotional gut punches along the way. In the end, Metro Exodus is a perfect blend of survival, storytelling, and atmosphere. It's the kind of game that stays with you long after you've put the controller down. If you're a fan of immersive worlds, tense survival gameplay, and stories that pack an emotional punch, Metro Exodus is an absolute must-play. Red Dead Redemption 2.
You coming, buddy?
Red Dead Redemption 2 is not just a game, it's a full-blown experience, the kind of game that pulls you into its world so deeply that you forget there's a real world outside of it. From the very first moment you set foot in the snowy mountains as Arthur Morgan, you're in for a ride that's packed with heart, emotion, action, and some of the best open world design you'll ever see. Let's start with the story, because it's honestly one of the greatest narratives ever put into a video game. You play as Arthur Morgan, a member of the van der Linden gang, a group of outlaws trying to survive in a world that's quickly leaving them behind. The Wild West is dying, and you feel that sense of inevitability throughout the entire game. It's not just a story about gunslingers and bank robberies, although there's plenty of that. It's a story about loyalty, betrayal, redemption, and what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. Arthur's journey is packed with complex emotions, and his internal struggle to balance his loyalty to the gang with his own moral compass is what makes him such a compelling character.
One more big score, we got enough money to leave.
But the real genius of Red Dead Redemption 2 is how the story unfolds within its massive open world. This isn't your typical run from point A to point B kind of game. Rockstar Games crafted an open world that feels alive, like it's happening whether you're there or not. Every town, every forest, every backwater shack has a story to tell, and it's up to you to discover them. You could be riding through the wilderness and stumble upon a random encounter, like helping a stranger whose horse has fallen, or getting ambushed by a rival gang. These moments make the world feel organic and unpredictable, like anything could happen anytime. The level of detail in this world is staggering. Whether it's the way Arthur's beard grows over time, the way mud sticks to your clothes after a rainy day, or how animals behave in their natural environment, everything in Red Dead Redemption 2 is crafted with such care that it's hard to believe it's all in a video game. The weather changes dynamically, NPCs have their own routines, and even the animals interact with each other in ways that make the world feel lived in and real. It's one of those games where you can spend hours doing nothing but fishing, hunting, or just sitting by a campfire and soaking it all in. And honestly, that's part of its charm. And while the world is massive, Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't make you feel like you're just running errands. The missions are varied and engaging, from robbing trains and staging elaborate heists to more personal, character-driven moments like helping out fellow gang members. There's always a sense of purpose to what you're doing, whether you're progressing the main story or just doing side activities, and those side activities, they're not just filler, they're carefully woven into the fabric of the world, adding layers to Arthur's character and his relationships with the people around him.
This is it, gentlemen. The last one.
One of the most impressive things about Red Dead Redemption 2 is how it balances these quieter moments with full-on action. Yeah, you'll have shootouts and high-speed chases on horseback, but the game isn't afraid to slow things down and let you live in its world. You'll spend time tending to your camp, interacting with your fellow gang members, and building bonds with characters like Dutch, John Marston, Sadie Adler, and more. These relationships feel real, and you genuinely care about the people in the gang, even though you know deep down that things aren't going to end well for most of them. Now, we have to talk about Arthur Morgan because he's one of the most well-written characters in gaming history. He's not your typical video game protagonist. He's flawed, he's hardened by the life he's lived, but he's also capable of deep compassion. The game gives you the freedom to shape Arthur's moral path, whether you play him as a ruthless outlaw or a man trying to find redemption for his past actions. And that moral system doesn't feel tacked on, it influences the world around you, from how people treat you to how Arthur himself reflects on his choices in conversations and journal entries. There are a few games that let you get so deep into a character's psyche the way Red Dead 2 does with Arthur. And visually, goddamn, this game is stunning. From the sprawling landscapes to the smallest details on Arthur's worn-out gear, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a visual masterpiece. The sunsets, the misty mornings, the storms rolling in over the mountains, it all feels so real. And the way the music swells at just the right moment, whether you're in a high-stakes chase or riding through the open plains, adds a whole new layer of emotional depth to the game. By the time the credits roll, Red Dead Redemption 2 will leave you emotionally spent in the best way possible. The narrative is heart-wrenching, and without spoiling anything, it leads directly into the events of the first Red Dead Redemption in a way that's both tragic and poetic. It's one of those stories that stays with you long after you've finished the game. In the end, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a near-perfect game. It's a masterclass in open-world design, storytelling, character development, and attention to detail. It's not just a game you play, it's a game you live, and it's one that everyone should experience at least once. Detroit Become Human.
What are you waiting for? Chase it!
Detroit Become Human isn't just a game, it's an interactive story that forces you to question what it means to be human. It's one of those games that makes you pause and think about the weight of your decisions, not just in the game, but in life. Quantic Dream took everything they learned from their previous games and created an experience that's as thought-provoking as it is visually stunning. You control 3 main characters, each of whom is an android living in a futuristic version of Detroit where androids have become an integral part of society. But here's the twist: these androids are starting to become more than just machines they're starting to feel. They're becoming sentient, and that's where the story really starts to dig into some deep themes. The game doesn't just ask you to guide these characters through a narrative, it makes you ask tough questions about freedom, humanity, and the ethics of artificial intelligence. One of the most striking things about Detroit Become Human is the level of choice you have. Every decision you make has consequences, sometimes small, sometimes huge, and the game makes sure you feel the weight of those choices. You'll be put in impossible situations where there's no clear right or wrong answer, and the story can branch out in countless ways based on what you decide to do. Your actions shape the fate of these characters and the world around them, which means that no 2 playthroughs will ever be the same, and that's what makes Detroit so engaging. It's your story. Let's talk about the characters because they're really the heart of the game. Connor is a prototype android detective working for the police, tasked with hunting down deviant androids, those who've broken free of their programming. His story is all about logic, order, and duty. But as you guide him through the game, you start to question, is Connor just following orders, or is there something more to him? The dynamic between Connor and his human partner Hank is one of the best parts of the game. Hank is gruff, cynical, and completely jaded, but their evolving relationship, whether it's tense or friendly, depending on how you play, is filled with emotional depth. Visually, Detroit is a masterpiece. The facial animations are some of the most realistic you'll see in any game, and the level of detail in the environments is incredible. Whether you're walking through the sleek, futuristic streets of Detroit or hiding out in a grimy, run-down motel, the game's world feels alive and immersive. The cinematography is just as impressive, with camera angles and lighting that make it feel like you're watching a high-budget sci-fi movie. In the end, Detroit Become Human is one of those games that sticks with you. It's not just about cool sci-fi concepts or stunning visuals, though it has those in spades. It's about the emotional journey you go on, the connections you make with the characters, and the way it challenges you to think about humanity in a new light. If you haven't played it yet, you're missing out on one of the most unique and engaging narrative-driven games out there.
Connor! Connor!
Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't just a retelling of a beloved classic, it's a full reimagining that takes everything fans loved about the original and elevates it to a whole new level. It's a game that not only pays homage to the original 1997 masterpiece, but also adds fresh twists, deeper storytelling, and modern gameplay mechanics that make it feel brand new even for longtime fans. If you haven't played the remake yet, you're missing out on one of the most ambitious and stunning RPG experiences in recent memory. The story is centered around Cloud Strife, a former soldier turned mercenary, who gets roped into working with a resistance group called Avalanche as they fight against the massive, corrupt corporation. While that premise might sound simple on the surface, Final Fantasy VII Remake quickly dives into much deeper and more complex themes: identity, the environment, corporate greed, and the fate of the planet. And unlike the original, the remake takes its time exploring the characters and the city of Midgar in ways that feel more fleshed out and immersive than ever before. What makes the remake so special is how it expands upon the original's opening chapters. The entirety of the game takes place in Midgar, which was just the first portion of the 1997 version, but instead of rushing through it, the remake lets you really live in the world. The slums feel alive, with bustling NPCs, vibrant markets, and quests that show what life is really like for the people living under Shinra's oppressive thumb. The world building here is phenomenal, and it gives Midgar a richness and depth that makes you feel connected to the place and its people.
The Shinra Electric Power Company is...
But let's talk about the gameplay. because this is where Final Fantasy VII Remake truly stands out. Gone are the strictly turn-based battles of the original. Instead, the game introduces a hybrid combat system that blends real-time action with strategic elements from the original's active time battle ATB system. You're able to hack and slash with Cloud's Buster Sword in real time, but you can also slow down time to select abilities, cast spells, and use items. It's the best of both worlds, combining the thrill of action with the depth of strategy that fans love from the original. You can also switch between party members on the fly, which adds another layer of tactical depth to every encounter. Each character feels unique. Barrett's long-range attacks, Tifa's quick, combo-heavy strikes, and Aerith's magical prowess all play differently, and mastering them is part of the fun. And then there's the materia system, which returns from the original with a fresh spin. It's still the core of your customization, allowing you to equip characters with magic abilities and stat boosts, but the remake introduces new materia combinations and upgrades that make experimenting with different builds super satisfying. Finding the right balance of materia for each character and situation becomes a rewarding challenge, especially as you face tougher enemies and bosses. Visually, Final Fantasy VII Remake is nothing short of breathtaking. The environments are incredibly detailed, from the dingy, neon-lit slums to the high-tech, pristine towers of Shinra. Midgar feels like a living, breathing city, and the attention to detail in everything from the architecture to the character designs is stunning. The game's cinematics are Hollywood level, with emotional performances, sweeping camera angles, and action sequences that'll leave your jaw on the floor. And let's be honest, seeing Cloud, Sephiroth, and the rest of the gang in HD glory is nothing short of epic. If you're looking for a game that combines stunning visuals, deep combat, emotional storytelling, and a world you can truly get lost in, Final Fantasy VII Remake is an absolute must-play. Whether you're a die-hard fan of the original or a newcomer to the series, this game is a masterpiece in its own right. Well everyone, that was all for this video. I hope you enjoyed my list. Now I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.